Welcome to the Clear Gun Show. I'm your host, Dr. G, with a PhD. Before we get started, remember guys, tell your friends about this show, and please like and subscribe on this episode. It really helps with the YouTube algorithms. If you like the thumbnail art, you can check it out on a much higher resolution on Instagram. And remember, leave any questions you might have throughout the week. And on the last episode of the week, I will be answering the questions in a mailbag. We've got a lot to go over on the show today. First of all, we're going to see Dr. Fauci. We haven't seen that guy in a little while, see what he's up to. Then we're going to go into Canada, and we're going to break down a lot of stuff that happened, especially in the last 48 hours with Trudeau enacting the Emergency Act. They're seizing money from the banks. Give, Send, Go has been hacked. The whole thing's out of control. Canada's really crazy. We'll break it all down. Then we're going to go over to LA and check out the Super Bowl, what happened there in terms of COVID and the crazy policies. We'll look at New York firing their workers. We'll look at a US FDA video. And finally, we'll go over how in Denmark, they released a website on COVID misinformation, and I don't think it's what you guys are going to be expecting. So let's dive on in. I hope everyone's having a great start of the week / middle of the week. Before we get started here, I just want to do a couple of notes about the channel, and they're really good. So first, we're at 29 subscribers, super close to 30. Come on, guys, let's push it over the edge. But on a second note, we also got our very first reasonable debate in the comment section on this show, and I'm super excited about it, and I want to just highlight it right here. It was between the professor, Archie Bunker, and D Money. I want to thank you guys so much for showing what's possible in a comment section on the internet where it doesn't just go straight to insults. This is really good stuff, and I really hope this show promotes a lot more of this. Thank you guys so much for participating in the first reasonable discussion in the comment section on this show. So we'll be getting to Canada in a minute, but first I kind of wanted to start out with something different. Do you guys remember Dr. Fauci? Where is that guy? What's he been up to? Well, I found this video.
There may be the need for yet again another boost, in this case, a fourth dose boost for an individual receiving the mRNA that could be based on age as well as underlying conditions. So I don't think you're going to be hearing, if you do, any kind of recommendations that would be across the board for everyone. It very likely will take into account what subset of people have a diminished or not protection against the important parameters such as hospitalization.
There's Little Weasel doing what he does best. That video was actually taken a couple of weeks ago, and I meant to play it back then, but things just kept piling on. And that's really the last we've heard of Dr. Fauci. Remember, the narrative is changing super quickly, so we're going to stop hearing as much from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Walensky, all these hotshots, because it is not politically popular right now. But if anyone is still really listening to him, hey, that fourth booster, it's really gonna make that difference in the next wave. Really gonna do it. But now on to some real news. Let's go to Canada, where things have taken a turn for the worst for the truckers. So for starters, Justin Trudeau issued for the first time in the nation's history the usage of the Emergency Act, and we're going to go over that clip right now, then I'll talk a little about the act itself.
After discussing with Cabinet and caucus, after consultation with premiers from all provinces and territories, after speaking with opposition leaders, the federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address. The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions. In addition, financial institutions will be authorized or directed to render essential services to help address the situation, including by regulating and prohibiting the use of property to fund or support illegal blockades. And finally, it will enable the RCMP to enforce municipal bylaws and provincial offences where required.
So this was unexpected and an absolutely terrifying move made by the Prime Minister. So before we go on, and we're really going to break down that part about the bank seizing the money, that is absolutely insane. Before we go on to that, though, let me just explain to you guys briefly what the Emergency Act is. And this comes from the Canadian news channel, so, do with that what you will. But here they outline it. The Emergency Act, which replaced the War Measure Act in the 1980s, defines a national emergency as a temporary, urgent, and critical situation that seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians and is of such proportions or nature as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with it. The Act gives special powers to respond to emergency scenarios affecting public welfare, such as natural disasters, disease outbreaks, public order, civil unrest, international emergencies, or war emergencies. It grants the Cabinet the ability to take special temporary measures that may not be appropriate in normal times to cope with an urgent and critical situation and the resulting fallout. It is still subject to the protections of the Charter rights and freedoms. Once the Cabinet declares an emergency, it takes effect immediately. But the government still needs to go to Parliament within 7 days to get full approval. If either the Commons or the Senate votes against the motion, the emergency declaration is revoked. So now Trudeau's next hill to overcome is proving to both the Commons and the Senate that the country is in a state of emergency. Now this next clip might be the single most terrifying clip I have played on the show this year.
The government is issuing an order with immediate effect under the Emergencies Act, authorizing Canadian financial institutions to temporarily cease providing financial services where the institution suspects that an account is being used to further the illegal blockades and occupations. This order covers both personal and corporate accounts. Third, we are directing Canadian financial institutions to review their relationships with anyone involved in the illegal blockades and report to the RCMP or CSIS. As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability for actions taken in good faith. Federal government institutions will have a new broad authority to share relevant information with banks and other financial service providers to ensure that we can all work together to put a stop to the funding of these illegal blockades.
So first of all, glad that they're all wearing those masks, to keep that role really in play. And, Justin recovered quite well from his COVID, so there's that. But this is really insane. So what they're doing is they're basically going up to the banks and saying, if you fund anybody, if you help to fund or help provide the funds for anything having to do with the trucker situation, we're going to pause that money. We can pull that money. We can do things to make your life very difficult. So this is terrifying. Okay, first of all, this is probably the best argument for crypto right now. The government is coming in to the place where you keep your money, and they're saying, all right, all of this is our money now until we decide this particular threat is over. And what's the threat? This trucker freedom convoy. Not only are they telling the banks what to do with the money, all of your money, they're also saying that they're going to protect the banks from liability, right? So from lawsuits and things like that down the road, as long as they comply with the government. So say you're a company and you gave money to the truckers. Now the banks paused all that money. They're not giving it back to you. They're just holding it. And the government's going to do whatever they want with it. And then, time passes, things calm down. You decide to sue the bank. Well, the government's going to protect the bank from messing with your own money. The whole thing is just absolutely insane. This is tin pot dictator stuff, okay? Canada is allegedly one of the most, free nations on the Democratic Index. I don't think so. I think a lot of countries around the world are looking and laughing right now because this is just ridiculous. Speaking of, terrible things happening with people's money in relation to the convoy, this comes from Reuters. Names of Canada truck convoy donors are leaked after a reported hack. A website devoted to disseminating leaked data says it was given reams of information about donors to a Canadian movement opposed to pandemic health measures after a fundraising platform popular with supporters of the group allegedly suffered a hack. Distributed Denial of Secrets, DDoS, said on its website late on Sunday that it had 30 megabytes of donor information from the US-based Christian fundraising site GiveSendGo, including names, email addresses, zip codes, and internet protocol addresses. The funding of the Canadian protest has emerged as a key point of interest as authorities in Ottawa and elsewhere try to get a grip on rallies led by truckers that have been blockading cities and border crossings across Canada with demands that include the deposition of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In an email on Monday, a GiveSendGo spokesperson said that the site was still soliciting donations to the Freedom Convoy of 2022 campaign and that donations were not being refunded. The spokesperson did not immediately comment on the hack itself. GiveSendGo had previously asserted it was not subject to a Canadian court order that froze these funds. A journalist at the Daily Digital news outlet said on Twitter that the GiveSendGo site suffered a hack overnight and had its front page briefly replaced by a clip from the movie Frozen and a manifesto accusing it of supporting an insurrection in Ottawa. DDoS said that because the donor information contains sensitive personal information, it would not be making the data available publicly, but would instead be offering it to journalists and researchers. DDoS describes itself as a nonprofit devoted to enabling the free transmission of data in the public interest. I can tell you Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government, well, some of them, are going to be paying top dollar to get access to this information. This is really scary. So I'm going to end this segment with two videos juxtaposing Justin Trudeau and some peaceful protests. Allegedly at least. So first of all, here's Justin Trudeau in June of 2020 marching with Black Lives Matters and kneeling. Okay, that was June 2020, middle of the pandemic. It was heating up. He got a lot of flack for this, right? You know, he was risking lives going out there. People didn't know much about COVID, and he went out and he kneeled with these protesters. Okay, that was one peaceful protest. Now he's invoked for the first time in Canada's history the Emergencies Act on these truckers honking. Okay, here's a video of what the emergency is about. This is the emergency that he's invoking this act for. Justin Trudeau has to prove that this is the emergency that requires the Emergency Act. And by the way, Ottawa has lifted their restrictions. Okay, they've lifted their COVID restrictions. So this is a real uphill battle for Justin. I think he's just super power hungry. He's a tin pot dictator. Canada's going to get over this. The truckers have won, but was a really scary turn. Now going to the U.S., where hypocrisy is in no short supply, especially in California during the Super Bowl, which happened this past weekend. So first of all, I don't know if anyone else knew this, but California is still in a COVID state of emergency.
And this coming weekend, we're going to be seeing scenes like this one.
Assemblyman Kevin Kiley swapping out masks on the Assembly floor Thursday in his appeal to end California's state of emergency. The order gives Governor Gavin Newsom broad power to suspend and put in place new pandemic-related rules.
California is hosting the actual Super Bowl during a state of emergency.
A closer look.
So that's always good. So how many people were actually in the Super Bowl? So the stadium was sold out, right? So it's 70,240 people in the crowd. Allegedly, attendees are required to be double vaccinated or have a negative PCR test to enter the stadium, but there's going to be no social distancing, right, during a state of emergency. Okay, got it. So ostensibly, we're supposed to be masking in this arena, but look at all these celebrities that weren't.
Hollywood, who do we got here? We got Jay-Z, Matt Damon, Charlize Theron is here, LeBron, Jennifer and Ben.
So these celebrities don't have to wear masks, but then when people are singing, the kids' orchestra behind the singers, all those kids have to be masked. Look at this. Look at how insane this is. But if anyone was wondering, California's indoor mask mandate is going to end this week. So this article was written last week for vaccinated people, the governor says. And this is an article in CNN. So on February 15th, California's statewide indoor mask requirement will expire. Unvaccinated people must still wear masks in indoor public settings. I have no idea how they're going to know who is or isn't. I've heard some people say, well, there's the vaccine card. And I keep thinking, yeah, you mean that tiny little piece of card stock that literally anybody could print and write on? That's how they're going to tell? I mean, it seems reliable to me. Now, here's the important part. And as you guys know, I've been 100% behind ending these school policies for COVID. I think they're one of the most destructive things we've done in the last 2 years. But California officials indicated school masking policies will be updated to reflect the new statewide policy, according to a source with direct knowledge of the situation. The state is continuing to work with education, public health, and community leaders to update masking requirements at schools to adapt to changing conditions and ensure the safety of kids, teachers, and staff. If anyone from California is listening that can change something about this, I'll give you a hint real quick. End them. Just end them. All of them. Take down all the masks. No more masks at schools for COVID-19, period. So just remember, the next time you hear any of these leaders say they're doing it based on science, the only science they're basing this off of is political science. On to more politicians sciencing. This comes from the New York Post. Mayor Adams from New York fires 1,430 New York City workers for refusing to get the COVID vaccine. Oh boy. Mayor Eric Adams fired more than 1,400 government workers who refused to get vaccinated, the city revealed on Monday, including 36 NYPD personnel, 25 fire department workers, and 914 Department of Education staffers. The number had dropped considerably by last Friday's vaccine mandate deadline as more employees submitted proof of getting at least one shot. At one point last week, officials estimated that 4,000 were on the chopping block. The number then dropped to around 3,400, then to the 1,430 firings that happened yesterday. In one category, there were 2,400 veteran employees on leave without pay who had not opted to extend their health insurance and had not provided proof of vaccination. In the end, 1,428 of those city workers failed to get shots and were fired. Nearly 1,000, or 40%, provided evidence of getting at least one shot at the 11th hour and returned to work. Meanwhile, 1,000 new employees hired beginning in August of last year had initially failed to file paperwork of getting 2 shots, but in the end, only 2 failed to get their shots and were fired. Adams thanked the overwhelming majority of workers for getting vaxxed. City workers served on the front lines during the pandemic, and by getting vaccinated, they are, once again, showing how they are willing to do the right thing to protect themselves and all New Yorkers. Real quick, I just love how the right thing is what he says and kind of against a lot of the science, especially if you've already had COVID. But that doesn't matter. He's doing the right thing by doing exactly what the mayor says. Okay. Continuing on, our goal was always to vaccinate, not terminate, and city workers stepped up and met the goal placed before them. Out of all the new city employees who received notices 2 weeks ago, only 2 who worked last week are no longer employed by the city. Harry Nespoli, who's the president of the Uniform Sanitation Men's Association, said that workers should not get fired. There are a lot of people who don't believe in putting this stuff in their bodies. The embattled New York City Housing Authority lost 101 workers who refused to get vaccinated, and 40 sanitation department workers were terminated, according to an agency chart provided by the city. But this is just the first round of firings. There could be many more. Another 13,044 city workers filed for medical or religious accommodations or exemptions from the vaccination requirement. More than half of these cases, 7,030 requests for a waiver, have been decided on. About 70%, or 4,919 requests for exemptions, were denied, and 2,118 were approved, but workers can file an appeal. About 5,000 cops and 500 firefighters were among those who have sought exemptions from the jabs for religious or medical reasons. The vaccine mandate was initially imposed by Bill de Blasio, and Adams kept it in place when he took office last fall. More than 10,000 workers had not complied. There are about 400,000 residents who work for the city government agencies. That's a lot of people getting fired, and a lot of people that could potentially be getting fired over a vaccine that is outdated. It's outdated for these coming variants. This is just such an insane policy. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. It's just especially insane when paper after paper after paper are coming out in the scientific literature saying, look, if you've had COVID, the acquired immunity is actually significantly more robust than vaccination. Right now, papers are coming out. We'll go over one that came out yesterday, on Thursday. It's just amazing that this policy is still going through New York. Now let's check out another fun video from Dr. Peter Marks from the US FDA.
Booster doses are important for 12 through 17-year-olds because data show that protection after initial vaccination against COVID-19 can decrease over time. Getting a booster will help protect adolescents from the serious complications of COVID-19, including hospitalization and death. With virus variants like Delta and Omicron, which is more infectious, it's important to have maximum protection. Getting a booster dose also helps prevent breakthrough infections, which can decrease the overall spread of COVID-19. Adolescents ages 12 through 17 who completed the primary series of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine at least 5 months ago are now eligible to get a booster. Parents, please make an appointment today. If you have questions or concern, please talk to your adolescent's doctor.
First of all, can you read any harder off of a teleprompt? Man, it was like looking at a ghost or looking at just a painting. That was very boring to watch because he was reading off the screen way too much. So besides that, show me the data. Show me some data that, first of all, this is safe to do boosters in this age group. And second of all, the effectiveness of the boosters in this age group. Show me some dang data. What's going to happen when many parents go ask their pediatricians for their kids, hey, if this one is so good and effective at Omicron and we need to boost them, why exactly is a new one being made and it's coming out in the next couple of months? Should I just wait for the new one? What's happening here? What's the point? Show me some data. And the doctor's going to say, we had this one paper maybe that came out from somewhere. That's about it. So this is just really annoying. And speaking of misinformation in COVID-19 vaccinations, Denmark released a website on COVID misinformation, but it's not what you guys might think. So again, all links are in the description, and I really encourage you guys to go check it out. But basically, Denmark released this website, and here's the title: Typical Misinformation Regarding Danish COVID Numbers. And they go on to explain that there's a bunch of misinformation regarding COVID-19, and so they made this page to kind of shortcut a bunch of the common misconceptions of COVID-19 in Denmark. So here's what part of the list of the topics looks like on the website. And then if you click on any one of these topics on the down arrow, it gives a description. So for example, I chose the misinformation, children get really sick because of COVID-19. Now I chose this in part because of the video we just saw. But if you look at it, it'll say, first of all, this is not correct. Then they'll go on to say what they've experienced in Denmark and give examples and give case numbers and give stats, on all of this. Well, who are you going to trust? That 1 minute video of some guy reading off a teleprompter that has no data and just tells you you'll get boosted? Or this, where they give you numbers, they give you stats, you can go look them up yourself. I mean, it's this 10 out of 10 every day of the week. I can only hope, but I'm not confident at all that the CDC and the FDA are going to come out with a website like this. It's just not politically convenient. Denmark is done with restrictions, so they can say all the truth they want, and there's no repercussion because everyone's free there. And that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Please share it and subscribe and tell your friends to do the same. And please, let's continue the reasonable discussion. That was such a cool thing to see on the show in the comments. An organic discussion that was polite and respectful and, came to some good, respectful conclusions. So I hope to see a lot more of that kind of thing. I think it's great when a community comes together and learns and builds with each other. Please enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys again on Thursday or Friday.
I had unlimited service after that. I was getting drinks and I was getting snacks, and I was taking photos in the back with all the students. It was fun.
Wait a minute, drinks? You're 19 years old.
I'm talking about Mountain Dews, maybe.